Have you ever wondered who stood as the mightiest among ancient Greek warriors? The answer lies in a name that has echoed through millennia: Achilles. His tale is not just one of battle and glory, but also of vulnerability and human emotion. Today, we dive deep into the life of Achilles, a warrior whose legend transcends time. When we talk about Achilles, we're not just talking about any warrior. We're diving into the story of a hero whose birth was nothing short of extraordinary. Achilles was born to Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea goddess known for her beauty and power. This mix of mortal and divine blood in Achilles' veins set him apart right from the start. Now, Peleus wasn't just any king. He was known for his bravery and strength. But what really makes his story interesting is how he came to marry Thetis. You see, Thetis was no ordinary goddess. She was desired by both Zeus and Poseidon, the big shots of the Greek pantheon. However, there was a prophecy that Thetis' son would be greater than his father, which, understandably, made these gods a bit nervous. So, they decided it was safer to have her marry a mortal, and Peleus was the lucky guy. The wedding of Peleus and Thetis was a big deal. It was like the event of the century in the world of gods and mortals. Everyone who was anyone was there. But, as often happens in Greek myths, not everything went smoothly. Eris, the goddess of discord, wasn't invited, and she didn't take that snub lightly. She crashed the party, throwing a golden apple inscribed with, "To the fairest among the guests." This act of spite sparked a beauty contest between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, leading to the infamous judgment of Paris, which eventually triggered the Trojan War. So, Achilles' story begins against the backdrop of this divine drama. From his first breath, he was entwined with the fates of both gods and men. His mother, Thetis, knowing the dangers and glories that awaited her son, sought to protect him. She dipped him in the river Styx, the river that separates the world of the living from the world of the dead. This act was supposed to make him invincible, and it almost did, except for his heel, where she held him, which remained vulnerable. This blend of divine intervention, royal blood, and a touch of vulnerability set the stage for Achilles' life. He wasn't just born to be a warrior, he was born to be a legend. His story is a fascinating mix of power, prophecy, and the complexities of being half god, half mortal. From the very beginning, Achilles was more than just a character in a story. He was a symbol of greatness, with a hint of tragedy waiting in the wings. So, Achilles' early years were anything but ordinary. After his birth, filled with divine omens and prophecies, came the time for him to learn and grow. And who better to teach a future hero than Chiron, the wisest of all centaurs? Chiron was not your average centaur. Most centaurs were known for being wild and unruly, but Chiron was different. He was wise, kind, and knowledgeable in ways that others weren't. He was a revered teacher and healer, respected by both gods and mortals. In fact, Chiron was so unique because he was immortal, a son of the Titan Cronus, and a nymph named Philyra. This background gave him a perspective and wisdom that was unmatched. Now you might be wondering, why was Achilles sent to Chiron? Well, Thetis, Achilles' mother, knew that her son was destined for greatness, and also for a life filled with challenges. She wanted to ensure that Achilles received the best education possible, one that would prepare him for everything life might throw his way. And Chiron's training was not just about fighting. Yes, Achilles learned the art of war, but he also learned about medicine, music, hunting, and morals. Chiron's teaching style was holistic, focusing on developing both the body and the mind. Under Chiron's guidance, Achilles grew into a well-rounded individual. He became skilled with weapons, yes, but he also developed a deep understanding of the world around him. Chiron's lessons often included teachings about the importance of honor, the complexities of human emotions, and the responsibilities that come with power and strength. This period in Achilles' life was crucial. It was more than just training. It was about shaping character and destiny. Chiron's influence on Achilles was profound. He didn't just train a warrior. He molded a leader, a thinker, and a hero in the truest sense. The lessons Achilles learned from Chiron stayed with him throughout his life, guiding his actions and decisions. In essence, the time Achilles spent with Chiron was about laying the foundation for the legend he was to become. It was a time of growth, learning, and preparation. When Achilles eventually left Chiron to join the Battle of Troy, he was not just a skilled warrior. He was a person of depth and understanding, thanks to the centaur who had taught him so much more than just how to wield a sword. Achilles got wrapped up in a war. This conflict wasn't just a skirmish, but a full-blown saga involving almost every Greek god and hero you've heard of. The roots of the Trojan War can be traced back to that golden apple tossed by Eris at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. This led to the infamous beauty contest among the goddesses, won by Aphrodite with a little bribe to Paris, a prince of Troy. The bribe, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, who unfortunately was already married to Menelaus, king of Sparta. Paris, not one to pass up such an offer, whisked Helen away to Troy, and that's where things really kicked off. Menelaus was understandably furious. He called on all the Greek kings and heroes to help him get Helen back, leading to a massive coalition. This is where Achilles enters the picture. Initially, Achilles wasn't too keen on joining this war. His mother, Thetis, knowing from a prophecy that if Achilles went to Troy, he would achieve everlasting glory, but would also die young, tried to hide him. She disguised him as a girl and hid him among the daughters of Lycomedes, king of Skyros. But you can't fool everyone. Odysseus, known for his cunning, tricked Achilles into revealing his identity, and just like that, Achilles was bound for Troy. Now, the Trojan War wasn't your average war. It was a 10-year epic filled with battles, heroes, gods, and drama. Achilles, with his divine armor and skills honed by Chiron, quickly became the Greeks' most formidable warrior. His presence on the battlefield was like nothing anyone had seen. He was a force of nature, mowing down Trojans left and right, and his name became synonymous with fear among his enemies. But the war wasn't just about fighting. It was also about honor, pride, and the capricious nature of the gods. The gods were heavily involved, each picking sides and often directly influencing the course of events. Achilles, in particular, had a complicated relationship with the gods, given his divine heritage and his mother's connections. As the war dragged on, Achilles' role in it became more and more significant. His actions and decisions started to shape the course of the war. Every move he made, every battle he fought, brought the Greeks closer to victory, but also edged him closer to his fated demise. In essence, the start of the Trojan War marked a turning point in Achilles' life. It was where he went from being a student of Chiron to a legend in his own right. The Wrath of Achilles. This wasn't just any anger. It was a fury that shook the very foundations of the Trojan War and had far-reaching consequences. The whole thing started with a dispute between Achilles and Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces. Agamemnon had taken a woman named Briseis as a war prize, and she was given to Achilles. But when Agamemnon was forced to return his own war prize, Chryseis, to avoid the wrath of Apollo, he decided he would take Briseis from Achilles as compensation. This didn't sit well with Achilles. It was a huge blow to his pride and honor, two things that were super important in ancient Greek culture. Feeling insulted and disrespected, Achilles made a drastic decision. He refused to fight any longer. He pulled back his troops and basically said, "I'm out." This was a big deal because Achilles wasn't just any warrior. He was the best of the best. Without him, the Greek army lost its edge. The Trojans, led by Hector, took full advantage of this and started pushing the Greeks back. But Achilles' wrath went beyond just sitting out of the fight. He was so angry that he asked his mother, Thetis, to persuade Zeus to make the Trojans win, at least until the Greeks realized how much they needed him. This request showed how deep Achilles' anger ran. He was willing to see his own side lose just to prove a point. This period of Achilles' absence from the battlefield had significant impacts. The Greeks struggled big time, and many heroes were killed or wounded. The Trojans, on the other hand, gained ground and confidence. The tide of the war seemed to be turning in their favor. Achilles' wrath, in essence, was more than just a personal grudge. It was a turning point in the Trojan War. It shifted the balance, changed strategies, and led to a series of events that would eventually draw Achilles back into the fight under even more tragic circumstances. Following Achilles' wrath and his refusal to fight, the Greek army faced severe setbacks. But the real turning point came with the tragic loss of Patroclus, Achilles' closest friend and cousin. This event is not just a sad moment in the story, it's a catalyst that changes everything for Achilles and the Trojan War. Patroclus, seeing the Greeks suffering and losing ground to the Trojans, decided to take matters into his own hands. He had a plan. He would wear Achilles' armor and lead the Myrmidons into battle. His hope was that the Trojans, thinking he was Achilles, would be scared and retreat. It was a bold move, and for a while, it actually worked. The Trojans, seeing what they thought was Achilles back on the battlefield, were indeed terrified. However, things didn't go as planned for long. Hector, the Trojan prince and a mighty warrior in his own right, confronted Patroclus. In a fierce battle, Hector killed Patroclus, not realizing at first that it wasn't Achilles he was fighting. This was a huge moment in the war. Patroclus was not just Achilles' friend. He was like a brother to him. They had grown up together, trained together, and fought side by side. When Achilles learned of Patroclus' death, his reaction was one of overwhelming grief and rage. He was devastated by the loss of his friend, and his wrath, which had already been simmering, now knew no bounds. This grief wasn't just about losing a friend. It was about losing a part of himself. Patroclus' death became the turning point for Achilles, transforming his anger towards Agamemnon into a thirst for revenge against Hector and the Trojans. This tragic loss marked a significant shift in the Trojan War. Achilles, fueled by his grief and rage, decided to return to the battlefield. He was no longer fighting for glory or pride. He was fighting for vengeance. The dynamics of the war changed with Achilles' re-entry. He was more fearsome and determined than ever, and his sole focus was on avenging Patroclus' death. After the loss of Patroclus, Achilles was consumed by a singular goal: to confront Hector and avenge his friend's death. This led to one of the most famous duels in Greek mythology. Achilles, filled with fury, finally faced Hector outside the walls of Troy. The battle was intense and dramatic, with both warriors showcasing their skills. But Achilles, arguably the greatest warrior of his time, overpowered Hector. In a mix of grief and rage, he killed Hector, thus avenging Patroclus. But Achilles' actions following the duel revealed the depth of his anguish. He dishonored Hector's body, dragging it behind his chariot around Troy. This act, while it provided a temporary sense of satisfaction for Achilles, also showed a darker side of his character. It was a moment where grief and anger overshadowed honor and respect. However, Achilles' journey didn't end there. He continued to dominate on the battlefield, but his own fate was drawing near. Achilles' death came, as prophesied, at the hands of Paris, Hector's brother. Paris, aided by the god Apollo, shot an arrow that, guided by divine intervention, struck Achilles in his only vulnerable spot, his heel. This moment was as poetic as it was tragic. The mightiest warrior, invincible in every aspect except for one small vulnerability, was brought down, fulfilling the prophecy that had hung over his life since birth. Achilles' death marked the end of an era in the Trojan War. He left behind a legacy that was larger than life. His name became synonymous with both unmatched martial prowess and a tragic vulnerability. The story of Achilles, from his miraculous birth to his heroic deeds and eventual downfall, has been told and retold through generations, making him an immortal figure in literature and art. His legacy also extends to the term Achilles' heel, which has come to mean a critical vulnerability in an otherwise strong entity. This phrase, born from the story of Achilles, is a testament to the lasting impact of his tale. What do you think? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, please like and subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.